Welcome, everybody. Like I mentioned, my name is Katie Edson, and I am the nonprofit librarian for the Pikes Peak Library District. And so that means my reach is to generally nonprofits in the El Paso County area, but my reach can extend further, sometimes up to Woodland Park and Teller County. I did a grant writing class for the Small Business Development Center down in Pueblo. So Zoom makes this all possible. And I like to say that my job is to give people in our community the information they need to do good. So I'm here for you guys if you ever have any questions in the future. I have been a librarian for about 12 years. I've kind of done just about everything from K through 12 to general adult reference to working in a university and being a patent and trademark librarian to helping faculty and staff in the university with their grant projects to now being here with the Pikes Peak Library District and working with the nonprofits and grant seeking opportunities for folks in this region. It is a really unique opportunity and not one that many libraries have. So we are part of Candid's Foundation Information Network. So if you've ever looked for grants using Foundation Directory Online, their parent company is Candid. And there are only 7 libraries in the state of Colorado that are Foundation Information Network libraries. And we, of course, are one of them. There are very few library districts that have the funding to be able to have a nonprofit librarian. We also have a business librarian and a law librarian. And again, really unusual for a public library district. And so it's really exciting to work for this library district. I love them. So many amazing resources. So with that, let's get going. And you know what, I have a little poll that I'm gonna throw up here for you guys. Just wondering how much experience you have with grant writing, just so that I have a good idea. All right. So it looks like most of you are totally new to grant writing. That's great. Or you've written a few grants, but it's been a while. I will end this poll and share it so you guys can see. So it's perfect because I really do gear this class for beginner and novice grant writers. Again, if you have any questions, you can either unmute and ask that question. You can put it in the chat and I will try to keep track of the chat as we're going along, or you are also welcome to hold your questions to the end. So, all right. So writing a grant can really seem like a daunting journey, but I'm really hoping, you know, as we go along, I'm going to break it down step by step and make it seem like it's really possible. So we've already kind of done our introductions. And the goal today is after we finish, you should be able to describe what to include in a standard grant proposal to a foundation, identify a few best practices in proposal writing, summarize the proposal process and have confidence to get started. And with all that, one of the handouts, so you guys should have gotten all my enormous number of handouts. One of them is a grant timeline. And I really like that because a lot of people come to me and they think that they can find a grant, write it in a day and submit it and get the money by like the next month. And I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but I want everybody to be prepared and have the basic understanding that the grant writing process really does take quite a bit of time and effort. And so that timeline just kind of gives you an idea that really you and your team, or if it could be just you alone, so there's lots of very small nonprofits, but that you know that you should really start this process 6 to 12 months in advance. So you need to sit down, you need to search for those grants, find that best match, and then start working on the grants. And you should, before you even start, you should really compile all the information that you need so that as you go through the grant writing process, you have all your material collected. And one of that is going to be the financial information, which we'll talk about later. And that's one of the sections. So, so we already did our introductions. So let's move on. So this is just to me, such an important statement to remember as you go through this grant writing process, in that a grant proposal is like a contract, and funders are going to expect you to live up to your promises. So you are charged with finding the best ideas and solutions to accomplish your mission, whether that's, I don't know, ending childhood hunger in your city or preserving wildlife around the globe. You know, for a funder, rather than setting up their own program, they are looking to us, right? They're looking to the nonprofits that they can partner with to meet their goals and to fulfill their mission. They are looking for organizations they can trust with their resources. So it's up to you to demonstrate that you can be trusted. It's all about making your case for support. Think of the proposal as your opportunity to make your case, emphasizing, you know, your organizational history and background, your track record and your results, the accomplishments your nonprofit has had, what your reputation is, what's the leadership involved in your organization, what other funding do you have, what's your internal capacity. So as we go through each section of the proposal, keep this theme in mind. How strong a case are you making? And just think of it, like flip it and look at it the other way. If you were a funder, would you invest in your organization? So the first part is going to be the need statement. And this is where you answer that big why question, as in, why is your project necessary? So the statement of need helps set the stage for what your project will do. And these are the key components in your statement of need. It's going to be the description, the geography, the population, and the facts. And in the facts, we're talking about statistics, real life stories, maybe quotes. And I know that there's lots of words on this, and that's why I'm going to send you guys the slides so that you can review this information, because I'm not going to read all of it. I did, in a course, I'm going to talk about my handouts a bunch. So I sent you guys a handout that is specifically a worksheet to help you organize your ideas around your big why questions. So, you know, what is the problem your project will address? Who is affected by the problem and how? What facts and statistics can be used to substantiate the problem and the impact on the affected population? If your need statement describes your organization's funding and staffing or equipment needs, you need to start again. Keep the focus on the needs of the people and the issues you serve. Remember, again, convince the funder. So now we're going to move on to the project description. And this is the story of your program. And a lot of people come to me and they say, oh, but I'm not a good writer. I can't, you know, I can't be a grant writer. And I tell them, well, you can. You really can. It does help if you have a little bit of creativity because your grant proposal is really a narrative, and um, it's going to be a story about how you're going to accomplish this project or program. So the project description is the main, like I said, the main narrative about your project and how it's going to accomplish your goals. You are telling a story about what will happen when you apply your expertise to the need you've identified in your community. You know, like chapters in a book, the solution you present here flows from the statement of need. Questions that will be answered by your project description. What is it? Who will benefit? Where will it take place? When will it begin? How long will it take? What are the expected outcomes? How will it be evaluated? And how long and how will it be sustained after the current funding cycle? And we're going to talk about each piece as we go along. So the main components of the project description are going to be your outcomes, your methods, your staffing, your evaluation, and the sustainability piece. And so this is going to be the longest section of your proposal. Keep in mind that funders may have their own requirements for what they want in this section, and the order of the components may vary, and the funder might use slightly different language. You might see the word outcomes instead of objectives. The rule of thumb is to always, always, always follow the guidelines set by the funder. The project description is also going to be where you discuss how you will exactly address the issue that you addressed in your statement of need. Usually you will start off this section with a statement including the project goals and objectives. You know, you're going to talk about even if this project is already addressed, what are you going to do differently? So that's something to think about too. This section should clearly describe the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why of your strategy. For example, how is your plan going to be implemented? Who is going to do the work? Where is the work going to happen? You should be able to include a timeline or step-by-step plan showing exactly how the plan is going to be completed. Don't forget to include collaborations with other agencies because funders really like to see that. Do I have any questions before we move on? Okay, all right. So now we're going to talk about measurable outcomes. So programs have measurable results, right? Specific things that will happen as a result of your project. Outcomes should never be confused with goals. Goals are broad general statements of what you'll achieve. Outcomes are important because they outline your operating plan, demonstrate a match with the funder's outcomes, and illustrate how you will measure your outcome success. And of course, I have a worksheet for you that you can brainstorm. So, you know, go through and brainstorm using that worksheet just to kind of help you put things in perspective and put things in order. Also, pay attention to the difference between methods and outcomes. Methods are how you're going to get something done. Outcomes are what will happen as a result of those methods. You want to make sure your outcomes reflect the result, not the process to get there. Let me think. So as an example, a goal might be stated like our after-school program will help children read at grade level. But an outcome right? And we want it to be SMART. So if you haven't seen the SMART acronym before, that means specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So maybe an outcome might be written as, at least 25 out of the 30 children participating in our after-school reading program will read at grade level by the end of the school year. They will pass a grade level reading proficiency test that is approved by the local school district. So that is our outcome written in as a SMART outcome. So now though, we're going to go on to methods, and methods are how can you achieve your outcomes. You can think of the methods section as answering the questions such as like, what are the specific tasks? Why is this the best way to achieve your outcomes? Who is responsible for each task? What resources do you need? Who are the participants and where do they come from? When will these activities occur and over what time period? So that's what we're talking about in when we're talking about methods. How can we achieve our SMART outcomes? So now staffing. This gets into things that are a little bit more complicated. Staffing is the part of the project description where you will describe the responsibilities and expertise of your staff and administration associated with your project. Project staffing will likely come up in your methods section, but here you're going to devote just a little bit more attention to the qualifications and who is doing what. And of course, right, I've got a staffing worksheet for you. So again, you can work on filling out your staffing worksheet. I think the staffing worksheet is really vital because it really helps you, especially if you've got a number of staff that are working on this project. Maybe you've got multiple projects within your nonprofit, and this is a way for you to keep track of what percentage of your staff are working on this project. So you could say, like the project director works 25% of their full-time employment on this project. So you're keeping track of that 25%. You also want to keep track of your volunteers. You know, you could look at your administration, that admin assistant, maybe consultants. They're technically not staff or employees, but they play a critical role. And so that might be a contract reading instructor. Maybe you have collaboration with a steering committee, that's from some other organizations. You want to capture all of those individuals, paid or unpaid, that are working on your project. And this plays into the budgets part. And so we're going to talk more of that when we get to the budget section. So now you're coming to the finish of the project description. So this section will tell the funder how you will measure the success of your project and what your plans are for how you're going to keep it going. The evaluation plan, though, really isn't just for your funders. It's important that you need to understand what success means and how to measure it. And there's two types of evaluation, and with either you'll need to describe what information you'll collect, how you'll collect it, and how you'll analyze the data. So either might be appropriate for your evaluation depending on the nature of the project and its outcomes. So, and when we're talking about measuring, we're talking about qualitative and quantitative. So with the evaluation, you're telling the funder how they can determine whether or not the program has been a success. In the end, evaluation is a tool to determine the effectiveness of your programs. allowing you and your others to learn from your experience and improving your programs over time. So when we're talking qualitative, that's when you're getting information from questionnaires or focus groups, or maybe you're just taking some observational notes. The quantitative, that's going to be like the hard facts. So that's going to be when you generate statistics. Maybe that's going to be your test scores, or how many people participated. Those are all really important quantitative information. And of course, you should have seen that I have a worksheet that that I included in with all those other handouts that I sent. So now the sustainability part. So, you know, grant funding is finite with a start and end dates. It builds capacity. And what I'm saying is that it contributes to the future self-sufficiency of your organization by expanding services that might generate revenue. It will attract other funders in the future. You don't want to be known as that fly-by-night project. New organizations are generally riskier ventures for funders. So you really need to demonstrate that you have a plan for achieving sustainability over time. You know, do you plan on continuing your project in the future? Think about what other types of funding are you planning on pursuing? Funders generally like to see that organizations have a diverse array of funding, and that fosters stability. So any questions at this point before we move on? Okay. So I have read I've reviewed a lot of grants over the years. And when I am reviewing grants, I really like to read about the history and mission of organizations. It really gives me kind of a good backstory about the organization. I really enjoy that. But at the same time, like, you don't want to be too wordy, but you really want to include your origin story, right? Some of those origin stories are just fascinating and really bring to life your organization and adds just a little bit of a hook to your grant. Your mission, clearly state the mission of your organization. Maybe briefly describe your organization's other programs and expertise, including your successes, right? You want to tout how great you are, how good you are, and how the funder should fund you because you're going to continue your success. The staff part, maybe list the size and composition of both your paid and volunteers. This is just, we're talking numbers here. Your board, discuss the size and structure of your board. I sit on a couple boards, so I can understand, you know, that a funder might want to know who is on your board. Your audience, we're talking about the people who your organization serves. How many are served, and why do they rely on your organization? And then, of course, any other information that the funder asks, and everyone is going to be a little bit different in what they need from you. So now, project budgets. So I have just one slide on this, but it's really a complicated one slide. So this is, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction as to what you're going to include in your project budget. And if you want to learn more, you can sign up for my Intro to Project Budgets class. And I have that coming up on March 14th. It's pretty amazing because your project budget is generally one page, but yet I can talk for an hour and a half about what all goes into your one page. project budget. Funders see, oh, and of course, right, I've got a worksheet for you. But funders see the budget as a crucial tool in evaluating the credibility of your organization, right? It's all about credibility. Budgets also come in a variety of formats, so you just make sure you use whatever your funder prefers, right? They could ask you for a variety of different ways that they want to see it. Again, generally one page. Your personnel, obviously, your staffing. Your non-personnel is going to be maybe like your consultants, your computer equipment, your telephone, your internet, printing, travel, your direct costs. So we're over here talking about direct and indirect costs. So your direct costs, these are all the expense items directly related to the project. Indirect costs, another word for that would be overhead, or you may have even heard the term supporting services. People and it's basically people and organizations that support the entire organization. There's also a lot of other things that we talk about. We talk about benefits and taxes and how to calculate volunteer hours. I should say the worth of a volunteer. So that's all included in your project budget. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. And so now you're coming to your proposal conclusion. So this is where you tie your proposal together, but you're doing it while creating a sense of urgency for your program. You're going to include your vision for the future and the long-term impact of your work. I would say at this point, go ahead and add some emotion. Recognize the funder here. You're going to be answering the big so what questions in this spot. You're going to say, without the assistance of blank foundation, we would not be able to fund our after school program. Although you're going to say it in a much more gripping way than how I just stated it. But this is really a good little tie at the end. But really, what's most important is the executive summary. And the executive summary is a snapshot of your proposal. And it's actually going to be the first thing that your funder sees. Although I have it here at the end because the executive summary is generally written last. Just really because I think that you'll find that it's easier to write the summary once you've finished the rest of the proposal. Things to think about. Is it compelling? This is the hook that's going to entice a reader to continue on to the whole proposal. It should be able to stand alone as a one-page mini proposal. So, think, does it give you a clear understanding of the project? Do you want to learn more? Does it make a strong and memorable impression? Does it highlight the project outcomes? And does it specify the request? So again, there I was last summer reading 25 proposals, and I needed to get them all done before I went on vacation, right? But I wanted to make sure that I gave adequate time to read each proposal. I could generally tell after reading the executive summary what I thought of the proposal. If it was a well-written executive summary, I knew that I wanted to read more. I wanted to know how much money are they asking for up front, right? I wanted to see that on the proposal. Generally speaking, what I would do, and this is very common for grant reviewers, is to read the executive summary and then flip to the budgets. Not read anything else at that point, just flip to the budget, and does the budget mirror the executive summary? And then you're going to keep that in mind as you go through the whole proposal. Your budget really, again, needs to mirror the entire project or proposal. So it is really important that your executive summary, you know, that it, your executive summary is really well crafted. Brittany just asked if it's possible to get an example of a grant proposal written up. And there are places that you can get examples of proposals. Each one, right, is going to be a little different because, again, it depends on the funder. It depends on the type of grant. I can show you in a minute or two where you could go to look at some full proposals. But you know, think here. So in your executive summary, right, it's going to be maybe a paragraph or two about the for your problem statement, 1 or 2 paragraphs to describe your project, a paragraph explaining the amount of money needed, a paragraph explaining your organization and expertise. And, you know, so you're going to list the problem, the solution, the funding requirement, and your organizations and their expertise. So all that needs to be written succinctly and generally about a page. But yes, I'll show you. Candid has some proposals that you can look at, and I'll show you where to find those in just after we're done. So now, more than likely, you're going to be asked for supporting materials, and that's going to be your operating budget, your board list, your biographies of key staff, some financial documents, your IRS letter of determination. You cannot apply for private, to private foundations without that IRS letter of determination that you are a 501c3. And of course, any other supporting material. Again, I was reviewing some grants, and we asked for an independent audit. And one of the applications said they didn't have one. And so I had, we must have had over 100. There was a whole group of us reviewing grants. And so if you don't have all the supporting materials, I'm probably going to toss you into the pile unless there's some extenuating circumstances and you really make a case. And so then I might go back and call you and say, hey, what about that audit? So again, think about that. So this is just a sample of what a complete proposal might include. So you might have a title page. A cover letter would be nice. A title page if the proposal's more than 5 pages long. You should have a name for your project so that reviewers can easily follow along your proposal. If you are hand delivering it or putting it in the mail, you're not going to get fancy with binders or folders. You're just going to clip or maybe staple the proposal in the appendix, and then also the appendix separately. Think about, again, think of a board table full of people reviewing your grant along with a bunch of other grants. What is more than likely going to happen is that your grant or your proposal is submitted, and then somebody's going to make copies for each individual. So that's why you don't need to do anything fancy. You're going to put your cover letter on top and send them off. Remember, you're not going to use jargon. You're going to spell out acronyms on each new page or for each new section. Now, again, I'm just giving you information that's very generic. I can't stress enough that every funder and every grant is going to look a little different. And then if you are somebody who is going to be applying using, say, the Colorado Common Grant application, you need to remember that only a certain number of characters can fit in each block. So you're going to basically have to write your grant out twice. So if it says that your executive summary can only have 1,000 characters, you're going to write it out somewhere else, make sure it has 1,000 characters, and then copy and paste it into the executive summary block. And the funny thing, especially about the Colorado Common Grant application, is that it will let you put in more characters than it says. So like, say it says 1,000 characters only, and you put in 1,025, it will let you do that. But when it sends it on to the funder, it will chop it off at 1,000. So just something to remember. You want to make sure it's all about following directions. And if you're handing it to them and they want it all printed on pink paper, then you go, okay, I'm going to print it on pink paper for you. I mean, it's you just do what they want. Okay, so, oh my God, you've made it to the end, right? You are now going to have a number of people review your proposal, making sure that there are no typos or errors. You're going to review that you followed all the guidelines again. You're also, if you are submitting this online, you are going to take screenshots of your submission. You're not going to wait until the last minute because everybody is going to wait until the last minute, and then maybe their servers go down, or maybe there's some other technological glitch. So taking screenshots can be really helpful. It happened even at the library. They were submitting a proposal. They did wait a little to the end. And there was something that happened on the funder's end, but the folks that were submitting it took screenshots showing the date stamp that when they tried to submit the application. And so then they contacted the funder and said, hey, here's our proof. We tried to submit it on time. We're assuming you'll still honor it and take it because you had problems with your server or whatever happened. So that's why I always recommend taking screenshots. Of course, after submitting the proposal, that's when the waiting game happens. But keep in mind that it may take a while, so don't be anxious. It could be that you're applying to a really small funder. They may not review their grants every month. So keep that in mind. Either way, though, whether you ultimately receive the grant or not, it's not the end of the process. We are trying so hard here to cultivate relationships, and that really is a key piece of grant seeking success. If you get the grant, the funder is now your partner, and your responsibility is to keep them informed about the process, both in any grant reports that they require and looping them in if you reach a milestone or celebrate success. Maybe you have a party and you invite them. If, however, you don't receive the grant, don't lose hope. And don't neglect the relationship. It's not personal. If possible, ask for feedback as to why you didn't get the grant and find out whether or not, it's worth your time to reapply next year. So that, just think about that. I tell people over and over and over again, it's so important. Grants are all about relationship building because, maybe you want to get this grant again next year. You got it this year, you want to get it again next year. You're building that relationship. You want them to see your success. You want them to fund you again. But again, make sure if you may find out that the reason you didn't get it is because you had some errors. I, again, was reviewing a grant, and it was for, I think it was putting a roof on a historical building. But the person who wrote the grant used the wrong century. So the house was built, and he kept saying the 18th century when the house was really built in the 19th century. So it's just those little details. So that is really what I have. I do have, if you want to give things a little bit more thought, here are some questions that I have come up with. Thinking about as you are writing this grant, what specific need are you addressing? What are you trying to achieve? What is your strategy for making this happen? How will you know if you are successful? Why are you the best organization to do this work? And how will this project sustain itself in the long run? Going back to the question of why are you the best organization to do this work? Remember that grant seeking and grant funding, it is a competitive business. So there are more than 4,000 nonprofits here in Colorado Springs. Everybody is competing for grant dollars. So why are you the best organization to do this work as compared to another organization? Why should I fund you? Again, all these things to think about. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can go and look at where we can find some additional information. Somebody just asked, let's see, if you're trying to launch a new nonprofit. So getting funding for a new nonprofit is difficult, and it will take a little bit more time to find a funder who's willing to take a risk on you. When you're searching for funding, you might want to search for seed money. That's sometimes a term that I see. But so you still are going to have to make the case as to why you're better than anybody else. Even if you're new, why are you coming into our area? Why did you choose to start a nonprofit? What do you have to give to the community? Again, why are you unique? What is it about your mission and vision and the way you're helping our community that no one else is doing? What is your niche? Why do you need funding? So you may find it a little bit more difficult. A lot of times I recommend to new nonprofits that they need to prove their sustainability as an organization for about 3 years before they really apply for funding. You need to prove that you can stay afloat, that you have the grassroots support to keep your organization going. Do you have volunteers that are helping you? Do you have individual contributions? Generally speaking, most nonprofits are supported 70% from individual contributions. So funders like to see, again, your diverse streams of funding. And so they're going to want to know how else you're being funded. Did that answer your question? I hope. I am going to stop sharing. And actually, no, that's a lie, because we're gonna, okay, good. I'm going to go and show you where you can find some potential example grant proposals to look at. So I'm actually going to share my screen again. But I'm going to get out of this and just have to move some tabs around. Okay, so Candid is that overarching company that runs Foundation Directory Online, one of the biggest grant-seeking databases. The library has access to that. If you come into the Penrose Library, you can access Foundation Directory Online Professional. So Candid has kind of, I really want to say, actually they have like 3 arms. So they've got Candid Learning, which has classes. Some are free, some are fee-based. They just have articles, blogs to read all about nonprofit information. Then they have candid.org, which has some additional information, including Foundation Directory Online. And then they also, they came together, they used to be known as Foundation Center. They came together with GuideStar, and they came together with and called themselves Candid. So GuideStar is another arm of Candid. So if we go to resources, and right here are sample documents. And if you click on that, you can see here are sample cover letters, letters of inquiry. So those are, you might see that your first suggested way to approach a funder is with an LOI. That is a letter of inquiry or letter of intent. Here are proposals, letter proposals, the proposal budgets. So you could see some sample proposal budgets. And here are full proposals. And these are actual real proposals. Oops, let's go to full proposals. So you can read through these and see they've got what their subjects are and their population groups, and see if any of these are at all, close to what you are trying to do. But you might just want to look at some of these. You can also Google them. Sometimes you might find some sample proposals when you Google. I haven't had great luck. These are all pretty large. Like this is a multi-year support. And you can create a free account and then download the sample document. So that is my suggestion for finding some sample full proposals. I've created a sample project budget And in my project budgets class, I supply that sample budget. Does that work? I'm gonna stop now. Did that? Okay, Brittany, perfect. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? I know I just gave you guys like so much information. Sometimes I think I just kind of throw everything at you and then figure out that you guys can take some time to digest it all. And then when you have questions, you contact me again. Anybody else though? You're welcome to unmute or put your question in the chat. Okay. Otherwise, we are done. And that is, and you know, if you really want to get more in depth on grant writing, again, Candid, I would go to them. They have a self-paced grant writing boot camp, I think they call it. It is rather expensive, but it's much more intensive, you know, information than what I provide for you in an hour or so. I have taken it. I took it a few years ago. I thought it was really good though, but I think it might be, I don't know, $300 or $500. I can't remember, but you could go to Candid, you know, just Google Candid Learning. So if not, I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Hey, Katie, this is Jay.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering my question regarding
Sure.
the new person.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel about, you know, like Fiverr or some of these other places are hiring a grant writer? Obviously, it sounds like you know what you're trying to do. You have the best insight, but what's your take on grant writers? Should we become grant writers? Go ahead.
So I guess I have a couple different takes on that. I think hiring a grant writer can be a great benefit to your organization. If you want to become a grant writer, I think that's also a great benefit to your organization. I would say if you are a nonprofit that wants to go in the direction of like government grants instead of private foundation money, government grants require, I feel like, a different kind of skill set. And you might want to go for a grant writer. Grant writers can be really expensive though. So if you're a small nonprofit, you probably can't afford a grant writer. And that's why a lot of people, you know, become self-taught grant writers.
Okay, a follow-up to that would be, how do you convey, if you do use a grant writer, how do you convey your passion or other than the quantitative, which is numbers, you know, you can obviously, how do you do that qualitative, your passion or the emotional part? What's the best way to convey that maybe to a grant writer? Because obviously, you know, what you're trying to do and they don't, right. They're just like, so what's the best way to convey that?
Well, I think honestly, if you're paying a grant writer and they are an experienced grant writer, they know how to do that because they've done it a lot before and they've been successful. So they're going to sit down with you and talk to you about your project or your program and get that sense of why is what you're doing important. You know, they're going to be good at it. And the grant writers that I know, they're really fabulous. And they also are deeply committed to the organizations that they work for. So I really don't think that that's honestly a problem.
Okay. And sorry, anybody else, please jump in. But I'm the guy with 1,000 questions.
That's totally fine.
So how do you know which direction, or do you evenly split? Like if you should be going after government grants or private? Like as a nonprofit, I'm like, I want to get every cent I can get from
Hmm.
anybody. You know,
Right.
so how do I determine which is maybe my first step that the direction I should be taking? Should I go private or should I go government or both? Or how do I determine?
If you're new, I think the first thing that you're going to be working on is your private contributions. Who is supporting you from your community? And once you have that piece in place, then I would say it's just a matter of what you find that's the best match. Now, whether that could be private, that could be government, or that could be both. And government grants are different, and it is going to depend on, what your organization does. Are you education? You might find some great grant dollars through government grants. Are you working on solar power, clean water? Those are probably also going to be great to find through government grants. But private foundations, they have more unique grant opportunities, I think, that could be more of a specific match. So when you're searching for foundation dollars, your job is to find an organization that matches your organization's mission and vision. So, you're not going to try to get private foundation money from somebody who only funds religious organizations if you're not a religious organization, right? So the grant databases that we have, they kind of work like a matchmaking database. You're going to figure out and try to find somebody that fits with you. Does that make sense?
It does. And
Okay.
just, I'm throwing it out there, not for specific information, but mine is probably geared towards like homeless veterans.
Okay. So, if we were to go to foundation directory online, I can put in homeless veterans and see who is funding that. Now, to me, I see that as private foundations, but I also see that as government money too. So I think that, you're looking for as much money as you can. You're not going to limit yourself to one or the other. And again, when you're searching some of these big databases, you actually can include or exclude government grants. Or if you're just wanting to look for government grants, you go to grants.gov and you start searching there. It requires a lot more patience. And while they do provide you with information along the way, it is a more complicated process applying for a government grant. But once you get one, it's guaranteed dollars, and they're often multi-year. So it can definitely be worth the time and effort.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I talk a lot about your unique vision and competing with others. And especially if you're new, you need to realize that there's other organizations in town that are working to help homeless veterans. So you have to think really hard about what you're doing and how that's different than the other organizations that are also helping homeless veterans.
Yes, I just recently helped a homeless veteran get a place and have found out all the bureaucratic not loopholes, but all the different bureaucratic steps that you have to go to. And I think instead of being a program, I'm trying to look at it as a system.
Mhm.
And so it's been an interesting journey, but once again, I have worked with, or I've learned as I've been doing this journey of talking with different organizations, and it just seems to be a hand here, a foot there. And I think my approach is a more systematic, vice just a
Okay.
program, so yeah. And so this is wonderful. And I really do appreciate you putting
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
this kind of class for
Mhm.
folks like us.
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, again, and if you are collaborating with other organizations here in town, again, you're going to make sure that you put that in your grant, because again, funders like to see how you're working with others to get your mission accomplished. You play well with others.
Right.
So it's not an easy journey, but again, you're proving that you are the best one for the job.
I'm hoping to break your mold of 3 years, though, I have to say.
I would love to hear that. I would love, and you know what? It's just a general rule of thumb. It's not
Right.
set in stone. So, and there are some people who, instead of becoming a nonprofit, they go under a fiscal sponsor, and they work under a fiscal sponsor for a few years and then apply to be a nonprofit. And then they can show that they have a proven track record. So
I'll educate myself on that, because I've never even heard of that term before.
Well, if you're already a 501c3, you don't need to worry about it, because that would be like backtracking. But
oh no, I'm just in the beginning.
Okay. Oh, so you're not a 501c3 yet?
No, I'm nothing. No, I'm the guy that's figuring out how to make this journey.
Okay. All right. Are you in my class on Thursday about how to search for grants?
I just found out about these. And I just signed up this morning, so I will be there on your Thursday class.
Okay. All right. I do talk about fiscal sponsorship in my Thursday class. So as an alternative to starting a nonprofit, basically it means that you find another organization who's willing to sponsor you. And you have to work out a memorandum of understanding with them, and they will take, it isn't free. So you have to work out how much they will charge you. But in essence, they take over as the 501c3. Their name is on the applying for the grants, and they file the 990s. But it enables you to get your project going quicker and being able to apply for grants. And then if you decide that you want to then leave that umbrella, that security umbrella of a fiscal sponsor, you can then apply and become a nonprofit yourself. And you already have a proven track record. So that's one way to go about doing it. You're not going to be able to apply for grants until you have that 501c3 letter of determination, and that can take anywhere from 8 to 12 months or more.
Okay. All right, great.
So, all right. Any other questions about? If not, again, I will look forward to seeing you, Jay, on Thursday, and Charity. Thank you for being in the class. And if you guys have any questions or need any follow-up in the future, just shoot me an email or give me a call.